All right, we're live. Welcome everyone to this Montana Book Festival event. This is a reading with Submittable's 2020 Eliza So Fellowship Winner, Tiffany Midge, as well as this year's finalists, Chelsea Hicks and Shaina, and runners-up, Casandra López and Ruby Murray Hanson. Ruby. My name is Lauren Korn. I'm the director of the Montana Book Festival. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you to our Collector's Edition sponsor, Whitefish Review, for supporting us, and in doing so, supporting contemporary literature in the American West. Our festival would not be possible without this and other sponsors. We're really excited to welcome our readers today. So I'm going to hand things off immediately over to Asta So, who will introduce everyone. Hi, Asta.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to the reading. And thanks to the Montana Book Festival for co-hosting this event, and to Submittable's Rachel Mindell for organizing it. My name is Asta So, and I'm Submittable's head of people. A little bit of background on the Eliza So Fellowship. Its goal is to support writers from underrepresented groups with a month-long residency in Missoula, Montana. This year, the fellowship focused on supporting book projects from Native American writers. In light of the COVID pandemic and travel restrictions, the fellowship did not include residency in Missoula this year, but instead awarded the winner, Tiffany Midge, with a $1,000 stipend. The Eliza So Fellowship is sponsored by Submittable, and it's named after my mother, who immigrated to the US from Hong Kong with my family and me in 1982. My mother worked in housekeeping and administrative jobs in the San Francisco Bay Area for many years, while she and my father raised my sister and me. At age 58, she started showing signs of dementia, and she was diagnosed with early onset of Alzheimer's in 2012. She still lives in the Bay Area with my father, who's her primary caregiver. I wanted to note that sometimes people think that my family is the sponsor for this fellowship, but we really can't take credit for it. It's through Submittable's generosity, and particularly the founder's generosity, that this fellowship is named after my mother. I last visited her in January for Chinese New Year, right before COVID kind of shut things down. She's not really verbal these days, but she still knows me, and she spends a lot of her days smiling. So I'm sure she would love to join us today if she could. This is the 4th year of the fellowship, and I'm very excited that this event will feature readings from fellowship winner Tiffany Midge, and also finalists Chelsea Hicks and Shaina, and runners-up Casandra López and Ruby Hanson Murray. To help limit interruptions during the readings, I'm going to introduce all of the writers at once, and then they'll read from their works. Right now, Tiffany Midge is running a little bit late, so we're hoping she'll be able to catch up with us in a bit. The first reader we'll have is Chelsea T. Hicks, Osage Pawhuska District. She's a writer in the San Francisco Bay Area with work published in McSweeney's, The Believer, Indian Country Today, Yellow Medicine Review, The Rumpus, and elsewhere. She's a graduate from the Institute of American Indian Arts MFA program in creative writing, where she studied literary fiction. She works in language revitalization as an instructor of Wajajeia, or the Osage language, and teaches second language acquisition practices that she learned as an immersion instructor at UC Santa Cruz and UC Davis. Her dream is to publish several books, particularly one of them in Wajajeia. Next up is going to be Casandra López, who is a Californian Indian, Cahuilla Tongva Luiseño, and Chicana writer. She's the author of the poetry collection Brother Bullet, and has been selected for residencies with Story Knife, Hedgebrook, and Headland Center for the Arts. Her memoir in progress, A Few Notes on Grief, won a 2019 James W. Ray Venture Project Award. She's a founding editor of As Us and teaches at Northwest Indian College. Ruby Hanson Murray is an award-winning columnist for the Osage News. She's a winner of the Montana Nonfiction Prize and writes fiction and nonfiction. Her work will be forthcoming in the Massachusetts Review and Allotment Stories. She lives on Chinook land in the lower Columbia River estuary. Shaina A. Nez is Ashie born for Tuchini. Her maternal grandfather's clan is Tanisani, and Kelechini is her paternal grandfather's clan. She is from Lucachucay, Arizona, and lives in Mentmore, New Mexico. Nez received her MFA from the Institute of American Indian Arts with a focus in creative nonfiction. She is a member of Sad Be Hojo, Diné Writers Collective, and a board member for the Thunderbird Reading Series. Nez is a BFA program coordinator at Diné College in Saley, Arizona. And the winner of this year's fellowship is Tiffany Midge, who is a citizen of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe and was raised in the Pacific Northwest. She is a humor columnist for Indian Country Today, taught writing and composition for Northwest Indian College, and served as poet laureate for Moscow, Idaho. Her books include The Woman Who Married a Bear and Outlaws, Renegades, and Saints, Diary of a Mixed Up Half-Breed. Her writing has appeared in McSweeney's, The Offing, Waxwing, World Literature Today, LitHub, First American Art Magazine, and more. Her humor memoir is Bury My Heart at Chuck E. Cheese's with University of Nebraska Press. Midge's McSweeney's essay, Open Letter to White Women Concerning the Handmaid's Tale and America's Historical Amnesia, won a 2019 Pushcart Prize, and her comic collection of poems, Horns, is forthcoming from Spokane's Scablands Books. For the fellowship, she submitted a collection of interrelated short stories called The Urban Indian Women's Guide for Dating that centers around the romantic experiences of Lakota sisters Bernadette and Dolores. Midge says her stories are her version of an Indian rom-com, which is noticeably missing from the native lit canon. Of the collection, Judge Heather Cahoon said, while distinctly native, both the characters and the writing of this book in progress help broaden and add nuance to the public's oft-held one-dimensional ideas about American Indians. Stereotype busting aside, this work is highly entertaining and, simply put, a lot of fun to read. Midge considers her contribution to humanity to be her sparkly personality, and I dare say her stories are sparkly too. Thank you so much to the writers for joining in our reading today. We're going to start out with Chelsea Hicks, and I see that Tiffany was able to jump online. So hi, Tiffany. So if any members of the audience have any questions during this, you're welcome to write to us in the chat feature, and we're going to do a short Q&A at the end of this. But first off, Chelsea.
Hello, thank you, Asta. Hello, my name is Chelsea Hicks. I'm from the Gentle Peacemaker clan of Osage Nation, Pawhuska District. And I will be reading for a few minutes from the collection that I submitted for this fellowship. And because we were invited to read, and when I found out about that, and when I found out about being a finalist, it inspired me to continue working with an additional boost in the spirit of finishing the book or the work for which I had been awarded the finalist position along with Shaina Ness. So I'll be reading from some things I wrote to continue the work. Spiders in Los Angeles. The spiders of Los Angeles wove their webs. Succulence dripped with sprinkler dew, and jealousy struck my heart for the first time ever. I stood outside Cafe Tropical on Sunset Boulevard, enduring the roving gaze of a dirty blonde Hasidic Jew who stuck his tongue out and rolled his eyes back in his head at the sight of my belly button. My cafecito arrived at the order window. I walked over. Have you ever had a threesome? I asked him. It was LA, end of summer, very sad, very hot, and he was not as surprised as you might think. He didn't even answer me. Instead, he took his coffee from its spot beside mine, winked at me, and walked off. I looked at my phone. My boyfriend had hearted a pic of a hot millennial chef I'd sent his way. Her name was Charisse, and she was a blogging sensation and spiritual guru who wore low-cut tops while cooking ramen. I knew my boyfriend was attracted to Hawaiian natives, and I'd been sending him pictures of various girls. The only reason I could identify for doing this was the hashtag I'd seen by a favorite band of mine on Instagram. hashtag FYF. It stood for Face Your Fears. So I was making my fantasy fears come to life by tempting fate through a text message. The religious man had gone south down the boulevard, and I followed for the appearance of following him, and to tease myself that I would do it. But I had zero intention. When I came to Big Spirits, I turned in for a bottle of Velvet Devil red wine. I asked myself not why, but how jealousy was striking me now. That whole last year since I'd moved in with him, I had spent pretending not to care. I did that because I found that mostly I didn't care. My theory was that I now cared because I'd turned 30. On my 30th birthday, we'd gone to Palm Springs, and my boyfriend had drunk enough, and I suppose was comfortable enough with me that he whipped out the kink. That had shredded my heart. Our sex had broken me down. I felt elation. Inside the liquor store, standing there, I felt vulnerable. I started to tear up just thinking about it. I needed to get out of there. Then I could cry on my walk home. I went to the checkout. There was a tall white man with a beard and a scowl, and between him and me, red roses. The sign said the bouquets were $17 each. I picked one up, the darkest red bundle, and a thorn cut me. A tear dropped from my eye. I have never made the mistake of thinking my boyfriend was cooler or better than me. At the onset of jealousy, I wondered if it would be cool or not to tell him about it. But my jealousy did not have one cool aspect to it. Instead, I felt shameful. It encompassed even the mere thought of him alone in the apartment, watching porn, or worse, cooking videos of the health chef who I also thought attractive. But I wanted to use my dark feelings for good. I typed a text. I want to be hungover and listening to jazz beside a pool with you. This wasn't good enough. I deleted it. I went back into Big Spirits and selected his favorite, Cannonball, and a second of mine, the Velvet Devil. I would need extra wine for whatever I was going to say or not say to him that night. There was ménage à trois there as I went for the Cannonball. Not a great wine, but useful for letting him know what was on my mind. In that moment, I wanted to possess him the way he possessed me, asking what I was saying to my girlfriends on Marco Polo, what was in my headphones as I wrote on my computer, what I was writing in my journal, what I was laughing at on my phone. I hadn't given him my passwords, but I considered that as a possible gift too. We were not celebrating my birthday anymore, but the end of his first major project as a designer at a prestigious architecture firm. I went with Velvet Devil and Cannonball, no ménage. Before my current relationship, I'd been polyamorous. It was new for me. I'd been married prior to that, very conservative. Opening your mind up hurts because it's scary. But now I watched porn by women producers who ensured rights for sex workers because I wanted to participate in what my favorite women's health website, where I'd first encountered the hot chef, termed the pleasure revolution. At worst, this seemed like androcentric behavior, a thinly veiled attempt to do something because the men were doing it. But I also didn't want to be left out, even if it was just from something my boyfriend was doing in the bathroom on his iPad. Some friends had come out as gender non-conforming, and for those of us who still had genders, we were trying to be reciprocal. The most sexist men wanted to be able to wear dresses on magazine covers and in music videos. The most feminine feminists wanted to be allowed to objectify ourselves on Bellesa.com. One equivocally positive thing was that I felt somewhat in control of my own personhood, not like a programmed sex robot of a submissive woman. It was a little shameful that all of my fantasies were filtered through a view of male domination. But what else could I expect when I'd been taught that my father owns me and then my husband? Love to me was mixed up in being erased by a man, And if I wanted this relationship to work, I knew I'd have to somehow change that or else be crushed by myself and by the weight of our desire. Dali Wajoy, thank you.
Thanks, Chelsea. Next up, we have Casandra.
Thank you. Thankful for everyone who's made this possible. I'm going to read a section from my memoir. A few years ago, I was Googling, searching on the internet about the Indian school that my grandmother went to, and I came across this this series of ghost stories that was published by USC Digital Folklore Archives. And one of them was called Lost But Never Forgotten, The Ghost of St. Boniface Indian School. And I'm just gonna do a short excerpt of what it said. So there's this person that went on this 4-day retreat to the Monkey Museum, which is in the region where St. Boniface School is. And they were telling ghost stories at this campfire. And one of the stories was about a boy, a 12-year-old boy from Morongo Reservation, and who would have his mouth washed with soap and his hair cut off when he would speak his language. One day the boy died from suffocation. And then they say, if you are quiet enough, or in this story, they say, if you are quiet enough, you will hear the boy speaking his language and calling for his family. And so I decided to respond to this. And this is what I wrote. Grandmother ran away 3 times from St. Boniface, but she only remembers 1 time. Out of all of her siblings, she liked the school the best. In her school records, her name appears separate from her siblings. The only academic instruction she remembered was learning cursive. There is a picture of her with her hair cropped short, clutching an award for penmanship while she stands in a row of classmates. She didn't mind the work of churning butter or the strictness, except in her stories told around the kitchen table, she always noted they were not allowed to eat the butter. The school was segregated by gender, so she rarely saw her brother, but it was her younger sister who was homesick, and grandmother thought it was her duty to protect her. They ran away through the canyon, making their way alongside willows and cottonwoods to their closest relative, an uncle in Banning. I can't imagine them, 2 young Indian girls in their starched dresses, escaping back to the familiar. They were not the only Indian children who ran away, not the only ones trying to make their way back to the comfort of family. I wondered if they followed the trails of our ancestors, both the Indian and Spanish, their footprints etched across the river beds. This canyon tells many stories. Buried deep are the bones of an animal that was an ancestor to the saber-toothed tiger. It's a place of 2 mouths, a 14-mile passage to here and there, a place of convergence, one way leading to Tongangar, Los Angeles, and the other to the desert. They would have known this, having learned to recognize the gentle slopes of the land, the grasses and brush, their parents living in a ranch in the canyon. But their escape was brief because the priest knew where to find them. I don't know what punishment they received. These are stories that are not talked about in my family. But I have always known that they went to this school. This is a part of how we trace our way back through the splitting of family, the splitting of language. I learned recently that over 30 relatives by blood and marriage attended St. Boniface. My great-great-grandfather was renamed by the priest, and he later visited his own children when they went to school there. What does it mean when our ancestors' names are not even their own? Sometimes it seems impossible to write this, and so I try by writing, remembering the relatives that died there. I write Lorenza Gonzalez's name, so I will remember that she passed away from tuberculosis at 8 years old while attending St. Boniface. I think of how 3 of my relatives' bodies are buried next to the school that has long since been abandoned. Soon there will be apartments built upon the grounds of the school. At 98 years old, grandmother is potentially the oldest living former student, but she doesn't have much longer. Soon she'll be on a new journey. When I visited last, she didn't awaken. I touched her hand and tried to imagine what she was dreaming. I tell you this story not to conjure any ghosts. This is no spooky after school lesson. What use do we have for guilt and goosebumps when we have lost our land, by which I mean we were displaced, by which I mean our land was stolen? I am learning. The work is in the language and it is in the being. Grandmother's father and grandmother were the last of our family to speak our language. Sometimes the road back seems very far away. I'm trying to meet my ancestors somewhere in the middle. The language is out there, sleeping in my throat, and I try to shake it awake, even though it only sort of stumbles out. In the Tonga language, to say hikaye is to say wind, is to say breath, is to say spirit. There is no word for ghost. Thank you.
Thank you, Cassandra. Next up, we have Ruby.
Away, everyone. I'm Ruby Wajaji from the Zanzoli district. I'm grateful to Submittable and Heather and Tiffany for the chance to read, and grateful to read with my Wataji, Chelsea. And I'll read from a work in progress. There's the Indian. Patrick Huda drove his pickup toward the Ranch Wife restaurant with his Osage clothes hanging in the back seat. Outside Red Hawk, 2 cars waited at the drive-thru for cigarettes. He'd been eating breakfast at home in Hominy, scrolling through his phone, thinking of all the grading he had left to do before the end of school, when he read an ad from the Chamber of Commerce announcing that the Ranch Wife was taking over Red Hawk on July the 4th. Well, shit, he said. His wife lowered the Big Heart Times. What? The Campbell woman, he said, pushing the cantaloupe away. Bonnie Campbell, a socialite from the next town, had fashioned herself into a celebrity ranch wife on the internet. Her new restaurant drew 6,000 people, doubling Red Hawk's population most days. Jean was tired of what she called Patrick's obsession. The old man had been Patrick's grandfather's guardian in the 20s, and a lot of Osage money, of his family's money, had disappeared into Campbell coffers. She watched as Patrick took his Osage clothes from the cedar chest. He folded his leggings, then placed a ribbon shirt on a hanger and told Jean he planned to have lunch at the Ranch Wife restaurant. Why do you need your clothes? She asked. I'm gonna wear them, he said, as if that answered anything. I'll be back mid-afternoon, I guess. Visitors waited in the sun for hours. Patrick aimed a kiss at Jean and was at the front door when she told him to wait. She came back holding a water bottle. I'm just gonna have lunch, he said, but he was already wondering how his back was gonna tolerate standing all day. Traffic picked up when Patrick turned from the highway onto Main. A pump jack stood idle above an oil well waiting to be capped, one of hundreds across the reservation. The restaurant was downtown where Osage angled north to the agency. The Ranch Wife persona was built on pioneer wholesomeness. Images of cowboys on horseback, Stetson silhouetted at sunset, cycled on screens through the building. The Campbells were the 5th largest landowners in the United States and owned more than half of the reservation. Many Osages would never eat at a Campbell establishment, though some slipped in when the lines weren't long. Patrick turned onto 6th and parked in the shade. He opened the passenger doors to form a dressing area. He pulled on buckskin leggings over his baggiest shorts. He added breechcloth tail and the hand-woven streamers that his niece made. He laced his bells on his calves. He'd brought a pink cotton shirt and he settled his armbands. He knotted a leather thong under his chin to keep his porcupine hair roached tight and set the eagle feather, ducking to see that it was straight. The pavement was hot as he started toward the restaurant. in blue beaded moccasins. As he walked, the bells filled his path. He felt the hominy men beside him. People near the restaurant turned when they heard him. He walked with the chinging of his bells into the canned country music that filled Osage Street now. After a long moment, people started taking pictures as if he were a celebrity. He stood taller, his gut loosening against the wide leather belt. It was noon when Patrick got in line behind a group of women in their 50s wearing matching shirts. One of the taller women introduced herself, explaining they were a book club from Oklahoma City. They loved Sherman Alexie. They'd read Linda Hogan, all of Charles Frazier, and David Grann. People who passed took photos which hit social media by about 12:15. One of the women held out her phone. Patrick was a big man like his grandfather. He looked serious in the picture, glum actually, which was how he often looked, even though he told good jokes. The caption read, "How cool is this?" Hashtag Ranch Wife Restaurant, hashtag Cowboys and Real Indians.
Thank you, Ruby. Next, we have Shaina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shaina Nez. First, I just wanted to thank Tiffany and everyone under the Eliza So Fellowship for letting us do this event. And Tiffany especially, thanks for giving the opportunity. I'm just going to read a new work I've been working on. It's new and it's called For His Eyes Only. Okay. Do not feel sorry for me. I am not the victim here. On the page, I cannot manipulate you. I cannot manipulate you anymore because your eyes no longer meet mine when we talk. Your mouth is a thin line, and you keep the conversation on topic. Have you mailed off the shoes yet, you ask? Not yet, but I will. I'm sorry, I reply. That's fine. Don't send them off yet. I won't be at the same address anymore. I'll send you the new address, you say. Okay. I try to find hidden meaning in your words, but my besties tell me you only called for that reason, shoes. I'm hurt because I'm no longer wanted. I say wanted, not needed. I don't know what it feels like to be needed. I make myself only an object of desire until the desire is gone, because once you see what true power I possess, you will feel less than. Do not feel sorry for me. Jamal was hesitant when we first met up at the Extended Stay America in Tucson on East Grant Road. Are you sure you want to travel down here, he asked. Why wouldn't I be? You gave into the thought. I wondered why, but didn't press enough. I thought it must be nerves. I was nervous too. I arrived in Tucson close to midnight. 6 hours was not a bad commute. I've driven long distances alone before. The road was my religion. I showered quickly and wondered if I should blow dry my hair. I had no time to think, and you would be here soon. I twist opened a shot of Smirnoff Apple and took it in one gulp, and I opened another. I brushed my teeth and thought maybe he won't notice. There's a knock on the door. I glance back at my eyes, clear. I'm wearing a loose-fitted tank top and some black shorts. Should I lose the shorts and only wear a tank top? You might get the wrong impression. But I'm here and it's past midnight. The impression's out the window. Keep on the shorts. You may take it off later. I opened the door and you were wearing a Brother Ali tee, black cap, black pants, and white shoes. Later telling me they're Yeezys. Your brown eyes smile at me, and I couldn't help myself. We were finally in the same proximity, no screens in between us. My heart leaped. You made 2 steps in, and I wrapped my arms around you and kissed you first. I wanted him to feel my lips. I wanted him to know that me being there in that moment meant something. I wanted you without limitations or no expectations. I wanted to be yours that night. What did you have to drink before? He asked. Our eyes meet, and I looked down, embarrassed. A shot of apple vodka. I could taste it. I'm still looking down. It's okay, he said. You can drink. I'm okay with it. Our relationship lasted a week before I sabotaged it. I'm home alone. My daughter is with her father in Colorado. I hate my daughter's father. I hate him because he didn't want me anymore. He started dating before I could fully heal my heart and never gave me a chance to heal. He didn't give me a chance to process our breakup. I hate him so much that it still equaled some form of love. After my relationship with Jamal, I felt all those feelings all over again, repeating cycles, relapsing from self-animosity. A bottle of apple vodka, bottoms up, forever alone, I think. No one will ever really need me in that way. I'm destined for a cold heart and bury the love I think I deserve. I don't agree with the concept of what's mine is yours and yours is mine. I tend to shower my partner with everything I could possibly give. I'm a giver, and I secretly crave to be a receiver, but I don't see the exchange. I'm selfish at heart, but I can't say it out loud. No. Why do I hide myself only to let the next person down? I wake up the next day, my head throbbing, the ceiling fan whirling in circles. I don't feel the need to throw up. I rise up from bed, laying back on my elbow. I look at the nightstand, 3/4 gone. Still a couple of shots left. I reach for the bottle, close my eyes, and tip the liquid down. I don't know why I get happy to see extra booze after a long night of drinking. The simple perk. I have this gut feeling that something is wrong. I think I texted or I called someone last night. I glanced around my room for my cell phone. It's lying face down on the floor. Not a good sign. I pick it up. I don't think I can do this. I'm still heartbroken over my ex. I'm not over it. I'm sorry. Fuck. A text message I sent to Jamal. There's no coming back from this. Drink some more. The following day I'm at work. The usual routine meetings and assignments. I email my writing mentor, letting her know I'll send the next creative manuscript at the end of the week. I should have been working on this the past weekend, but I needed a break. Besides, I really focus on writing when my daughter isn't home. Her presence motivates me to be on task. I type and type, keys clacking profusely, and she will walk into the room, stare at the keyboard, follow where my fingers move in a rhythm. She repeats the word work and hugs me. My sun child, I call her, the light in this darkness. I'm near the end of my working day. I pick up my cell phone and I reread the text message I sent to Jamal. My vision begins to blur at the screen. Droplets run against my wrists. Why do I push away so quickly? My fingers try to find a rhythm to speak. I type, I'm sorry. His response. This is why I make myself emotionally unavailable to people. Take it for what it is and leave it be. My response. I fucked up. I'm sorry. Can we please talk? He doesn't respond back. I should leave it be. But then I call him and he answers on the third ring. Thank you.
Thank you, Shaina. Next up, we have Tiffany.
Hi, Asta. Can everyone hear me? Oh, okay. Hi. Great to be here in my living room. Thank you all for reading today. Those are really interesting and wonderful, and I wish that I could have heard them all the way to the end, but time restraints. Yeah, so yeah, I'm really grateful for the fellowship and missing Missoula, missing Missoula so much. I usually go there like twice a year, and I hope everyone's holding up okay and getting lots of writing done. So the piece that I am going to read is one of the ones that I had submitted for the fellowship, and it's like irreverent and about relationships and has a lot of humor and is quite irreverent. There's like some parallels I noticed between some of the writing that I've done in one of the other writers. She's not on my board, so I don't have her name right ready. Anyways, I was just hearing parallels, And I thought that was really neat. And I love hearing, Native Americans contemporized like this in this way. It's just really wonderful. And I can't wait to read more and more and more. The piece that I'm going to read from the Urban Indian Women's Guide to Dating is something that I wrote years ago called Fry Bread Grease. The first time Aaron kissed me beneath the Alaska Wade Viaduct outside the OK Hotel Cafe, he was loose-lipped and slack. The kiss felt unwanted, lecherous, and a distant but familiar panic came on strong and sudden, flight or flight. His hands toggled my back like a pair of starfish and pressed against me. I could feel his erection. Still, I let him kiss me. I had recently unclasped myself from a 3-year relationship, the figurative tentacle sucker mark still figuratively visible and raw on my figurative skin, and my 20s were waving goodbye in the rearview mirror. I had reached the age when getting married and embarking upon the tough decisions, the toughest of one's life, had peaked the pressure gauge. Decisions such as which appliances are most energy efficient, granite tile or ceramic, forced air or gas? Should I get pregnant right away, and by whom? By my newlywed future husband? How cliche, how provincial. By my boss, maybe, or maybe an old boyfriend. No, maybe someone new, perhaps the guy who will install the new storm windows on the ranch style or the split level that society expects all newlyweds to buy. When my sister Dolores first announced she was pregnant with her daughter Stella, I had leaned in conspiratorially and whispered, "Is it Raphael's?" Raphael being her husband. So there I was, being groped and tongued beneath the viaduct amid rushing metal and steel gray concrete, having just broken up with the man who I dubbed the love of my life. And I didn't know what was worse, the fact that I had broken up with the love of my life, or that I was walking around in full control of my faculties, an employed, voting, tax-paying citizen who still used the phrase, the love of my life. That was a bad sign, wasn't it? Evie reassured me that it wasn't quite living in a van down by the river bad, but somewhere closer to come over and watch my Lifetime movie collection and I'll braid your hair bad. I must have let Aaron kiss me because clearly my defenses were down and I was distracted. What with pining after the love of my life, Clay and all, and the one that didn't work out in the way the Disney fauna and winged sparkle fairies of my dreams had promised. Have you tried relationship counseling? My cousin had asked me. We're not that sophisticated, I told her, and she nodded as if agreeing. No argument there. Clay, the love of my life, was supposed to be my happily ever after. He was Chippewa Cree. If there isn't a universe mandate guaranteeing all eligible Native men to fit into the knight in shining armor on a white horse fantasy, or rather winds in his hair and a breastplate riding in on top of a buffalo, then there should be. Eligible Native men are rare. They're considered unicorns if they're reasonably attractive, which is code for having front teeth, and if they're employed, not in prison, not married to any of your cousins, and haven't imprinted sexually on a blonde white woman. Finding someone like Clay beat the odds, and you best buy a lotto ticket. My sister Dolores had wrangled a brown man, down with brown, but he was Mexican, still Indio, but different culture. I mean, he didn't powwow or walk the red road, for instance. However, he did cook up a mean pot of menudo, the hangover soup, not the boy band. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have known the term pendejo, an insult which, when used in the appropriate circumstances, has probably added years to my life. I don't do white, Dolores pronounced one afternoon over a glass of wine and a cigarette on her patio. What, you mean white food, white clothes, white furniture, white wine? I know, it's so hard to wash out. White dudes, sis, she professed as if a point of honor. You should put that on your resume. Some people, on the other hand, Dolores said, pointing her finger at me, sleep with the enemy. I don't know how they face the mirror in the morning. Oh, well, that's easy. I chalk it up to a form of vigilantism. It's how some of us exact revenge on the colonizer. Sometimes I'll date white men just to destroy them. It's a form of resistance. You are so full of shit, Dolores says. She's all smug. She married brown. If we belong to another social demographic, such as those who got engraved invites to Great Gatsby theme parties, Dolores could say she married down. Obviously, we didn't attend grandly catered theme parties, but just for fun, when people ask about my background, I like to say I grew up living large in a mobile home theme park, which usually elicits blank stares or the rare occasion when someone responds excitedly, "A carnival? You're a carny?" Dolores was unapologetically vocal about wanting her kids to look just like her. Brown, burnt sienna, russet, sepia. Her idea of family planning was something like going to the hardware store and picking out paint samples. Sometimes I wondered if this was her reason for having children as mere ego extensions or accessories, like a good bag, a good brown bag. I'd heard that after the Hollywood power couple Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman broke up, the studio requested they return their adopted children back to the prop department. People have children for a lot of weird reasons, but mostly because biology. John, who is my current bisque, ecru, eggshell boyfriend, said that his ex-wife Midori insisted she became a mother so that she would have something to talk about with the neighbors. Please, she was joking, I told him. No, she was totally serious, John said. Well, I hope the neighbors appreciated her sacrifice. If by having something to talk about with the neighbors actually meant driving them crazy with a crying infant, I said. She enjoys being cruel. It's an art form with her. It's her default setting, John said. I'd heard this tale. When John was first getting to know Midori, what most impressed him was how cutthroat she was with coworkers and with clients. She was really cunty, he told me. His eyes lit up excitedly, as if this was a virtue qualifying her for Mother of the Year. He equated her Nurse Ratched affliction with strength and fearlessness, the shorthand for, wow, what a woman, she doesn't take shit from anyone. It was only later, after he'd unfortunately married her, that he realized her strength ran more along the lines of oppositional defiant disorder, and her fearlessness resembled something more like the unmovable battle axe. And worse, those traits that he so admired were often casually and viciously trained upon him. He wouldn't be the first white guy who bought into the delusion that Asian wives were delicate, subservient lotus blossoms. I wondered if this is how Aaron, the man stuffing his tongue down my throat under the viaduct, felt about such things having to do with Native identity. Aaron claimed Cherokee ancestry. And though that wasn't the deciding factor in my going out with him, it wasn't not the reason. My Native friends had all done the math. I'm half, so that if I get with a white ivory frost cloud guy, my kids will be a quarter, and so on and so on. We've all felt that pressure. After I started dating Clay, my friend Cheyenne gave her seal of approval. Wow, an Indian guy, as in good job, as in you fulfilled your social and biological imperative. Once at a powwow, a group of us were all sitting around a picnic table, catcalling all of the Native men passing by. There goes your sperm donor. Hey, come here, you missed the donation station. Welcome to the all-service Native American Bank. Want to make a deposit? That one, go get that one. Cackling like jackals. If you do finally land a Native guy, Dolores told me, as if I were deep sea fishing for marlin with Papa Hemingway, make sure he's not one of those motorcycle jacket wearing gearheads, or else your love affair will go sour, like in the movie Grease. Danny's all bad boy, acidified urban skin, who's always organizing free Leonard Peltier rallies. But that all changed when the super tradish old school Sandy came into his life. Sandy can talk to coyotes just like Dr. Doolittle. So sweet she'll rot your teeth just being in the same room. She runs the elder program on the res. Let's call it fry bread grease. I prefer to view life through the lens of Rizzo, I said, slutty and unapologetic about it. Dolores kept silent, as if thinking, no argument here. Life and dating is hard enough just for regular types, the buffs, ecrues, beiges, and then add the complications of ethnicity and culture into the works, and suddenly you're confronted with a theorem needing a rocket scientist and a soothsayer. Dolores considers the Twilight Wolf Pack to be an allegory for dating native men. Think about it. They're ever elusive, all fur, teeth, and claws. Fur, teeth, and claws. Are you talking about native guys or Sasquatch? I interrupted. And hiding out in the forest, eating things you'd rather not know about. And even if one sets his sights on you, and even if you're agreeable to the whole paranormal element, you're still screwed because it's likely they've imprinted on a white woman whose face only makes one expression. That's why all the monsters flock to her. They have a pool going to see who can change her facial expression from numb disinterest to mild surprise. Her face is an airplane seat. It only shifts in barely discernible millimeters. A girl like Bella can't ever appreciate this sort of cultural currency that a wolf pack guy brings to the table, and that's probably why she prefers the undead. What are you even talking about? I said. Do you hear yourself? Native, please. It's the wine talking, Dolores said. Not every native has been fortunate enough to peel back that foil wrapper to reveal a golden ticket. The love of my life, sans fur, teeth, and claws, coming to a Lifetime movie of the week near you. But then again, who has? I guess I'll stop there. It's like a quarter till. I'm not sure how much longer we have. If there's like Q&A or something. Asta?
Yeah, you're welcome to continue if you'd like. We actually only reserved about 5 minutes for Q&A, so you're welcome to keep going, or we could start it now too.
Oh, yeah. You can, yeah, let's go ahead and lodge into that. That'd be fine.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. I love hearing that in your voice. Because I'd read the manuscript and then, but just to hear it in your voice, it just totally comes out.
Oh, wow. That's so great. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the audience? If you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the chat. I have a question for the writers. How is everyone writing and working in the time of COVID? Or are we working and writing in the time of COVID? Anyone want to jump in?
I guess since I read first, I'll jump in. Thanks for the question, Asta. I have been writing more slowly than usual, but I found that in the time of COVID and here in California, there are fires. It's been that I only do things when I have several reasons to do them or in a way have to. So I've been trying to bundle in a second language acquisition. I work with native language and teaching people who are learning native languages how to accelerate their acquisition. So I try to bundle it in by, for instance, looking up phrases that concern some of my thematic interests, like the degradation of women. Look up phrases like that in Osage, and then I'll use those to structure a story. So the best I can do is kind of make myself twice as slow at everything I do by using, I guess, in Oklahoma, or I grew up between Bartlesville and Virginia. We call it a twofer. So twofers.
I haven't been writing much. I don't know if anybody, but I've been listening to audiobooks on when I go on walks. So that's been great because I haven't been able to concentrate and actually read very much. So audiobooks have been great. I've also been working on some children's books, some picture books. So that's a kind of nice thing to kind of get myself out of my usual kind of mopey subject matters.
Anyone else?
I'd say during the pandemic, it's been a process, and I agree with Chelsea. It's like a slow process into working new stuff in. This piece that I worked on, it took me a while because it was just mainly from just journaling, and I wasn't too sure if it was going to become anything really. But I guess once I finally buckled down to just type it, it kind of just became its own thing. So for the most part, I'd say during COVID, it's kind of like let yourself have a break, but then try to focus more in on like the work that you probably can try and do. So I don't know. I'm just trying to stay kind to myself when it comes to working, because I tend to really like overwork myself, and it doesn't end well with that too. So it's a balance, I guess.
I feel like I've written some about what I'm seeing around me, and I've been walking and listening to audiobooks also, and that's been awesome. So it feels like the smoke that we're having, the fires, are like the last straw. Like there's the COVID area, and then this extra layer is just more than I'm ready for at the moment. So, but I think the kindness thing's really important. Just doing what we need to do to take care of ourselves and our communities. Has to be enough, maybe.
Any thoughts from you, Tiffany?
Oh, for some reason, I'm just drawing a blank on how to answer that question. I know it's a super easy question, but I just can't think of a good enough answer. My habits haven't really changed all that much, honestly, because I'm already a shut-in anyway. And not like seriously shut in. I mean, obviously I'm not a shut in, but I don't want anyone to get the wrong idea that I'm like kind of like agoraphobic. But let's say that if I were agoraphobic, that this like so-called lifestyle change hasn't affected me too terribly much. Everything's still sort of processing the way that it always has.
That's good. A question did come in from Tatiana about what is your process for editing your work? How do you decide what to keep or cut?
Okay, well, I'll just jump in. For a lot of reasons, when something's written, I'll just put it away for a while after a piece is written, stick it in a drawer, and then revisit it months later with a fresh set of eyes. That's a really good way to go into revision. And reading out loud is also like a really excellent way to revise your piece. If you're not enjoying the flow of the words, or if things don't have sort of, some movement or some balance, or in particular, you want to like make sure that your tone is stable, that your tone is like even throughout the piece. And when you read aloud, you can sense that right away, and just the rhythms and things. And a lot of it is just like dance. You just kind of get like a muscle memory for it. And you just sort of develop sort of a spider sense about, what's working, what's not working, what to cut. But I think that the delete button can be your friend in a lot of situations, just cutting out whole sections for things that aren't working. And that's kind of, my process for it. Is just constant revisiting, going back and going back and going back and going back and reading out loud.
Anyone else want to share your process for editing?
I'll share briefly. I like generating lots of material, all of which my initial criteria is all of which seems related to one concern, worry, or problem. that I'm thinking about intellectually through fiction. And then that my other criteria is all those things need to feel dangerous or hurtful to say, but in a productive or healing manner ultimately. And after I've done that, then I would agree with what Tiffany said about, I try to delete massive quantities of it. And I use the yellow highlighter on Word to highlight phrases that have a strong vibe or aesthetic. And then I organize the piece aesthetically around the strongest phrases. And then I do sense making last.
I can jump in on the question. Well, first, reading aloud is mostly what I would recommend too. Another thing I want to add is getting a good writing friend if you have one, and hopefully they're in a different genre, Chelsea, because they'll be your fresh pair of eyes as well, and they'll let you know on what's working and what's not working. I'm just open to criticism basically, and I really want to know what is and what is not working. But I like the idea of a former mentor I had, which was Pam Houston, who loved talking compression. So I really tried to make sure that transitions were tight and sentences were tight. And if I'm reading it aloud and it just feels like a run-on, it's like, yep, I need to cut something from there. And me, when I tend to write in a conversating type of tone. So it's like, I'll go on and on and on. So I make sure to just make those cuts and edits. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it's, I'll just answer real quick. I think it's helpful to learn your own tics. Like, I'm a very sloppy writer, but then, or sometimes, because I'm also used to writing poetry, sometimes I can go off, and in poetry it'll make sense, but not actually in prose. So, and it's also great. I really, really appreciate good editors because they'll see things that you would have edited yourself over and over again and you won't notice things, or so when I'm able to have an editor, I am always really appreciative of the work that they put in to usually to get it to that next level.
Great. And so a couple more questions came in. Trudy had asked about if any of you regularly read your work aloud to hear how it sounds. It sounds like that's pretty regular practice among all of you. Another question that came in from Michelle is, can you talk about the pressure to represent Native Americans and how a non-Native American audience does or does not understand or appreciate your modernity?
I can jump in on that. So what I submitted for this fellowship is mainly around stories of my daughter, and she is half white and half Navajo. So when I'm talking mainly about identity and kind of trying to, I don't know, just paint this picture of that Navajo is matrilineal and that it's important. I talk about that mainly to her dad because her dad doesn't really appreciate that my culture is the way it is and that our daughter needs to be valuing that. So I kind of address it within the story and within the work. Not trying to be a spokesperson, but just trying to basically speak from my own experience and basically what the frustrations that I'm kind of going through in terms of making this story kind of come into some type of creative aspect. So that's just how I approach it. And I think mainly of just experiences and how to best write it.
My answer would be in conversation with Shaina's, I think. Yeah, Shaina is my writing partner to exchange work with. But if Shaina is noting that there's inclusion of things like drinking and dating alongside essayistic addressing of the importance of culture and actual cultural teachings. I think I would characterize that as range in my own work, that I'm seeking to articulate what's expected of us, what we aspire to, and sometimes where we may be at or what we may be going through. And so I wrestle with the expectation to make everything relevant to whiteness and dominant culture by, at first, I think I was trying to explain in my work or coming back with anger against that, and just, but now I don't. I look at it as just showing incredible articulation of complexity and including the full range of both what's expected, speaking traditionally, both from white culture and stereotypes, as well as from within our own cultures with taboo and colonization, internal colonization, to the things that we're just going through as modern, people living where we live in contemporary planet Earth.
I'll add to that. I think I like that word range. There's range within our own work and then range within Native writers. And that's why I think it's so great. And like there's diversity within this group of writers here. Like I always admire, I tend to not be able to write humorous work. And so I always appreciate when other people, and like if you read a variety of Native people, they're writing about different experiences, and I think there's room for all of that, and that's sort of a good thing to have. I would say that also in my own writing, I found that I came into an MFA not really knowing anything, like just my own sort of just things that I picked up naturally or organically about storytelling. But then I feel like I was taught in a very Western way about how storytelling should be, how narrative should be, and it was a very particular way. And then I started teaching and I realized, hey, I'm teaching a very like Westernized way. And so I kind of had to get out of that and like be a little bit more open. And now I feel like I just really do in my own writing, whatever kind of I feel like works with what I'm writing. So I think in my own, I kind of like went back. I went sort of around, I feel like, from my MFA program in believing that there was like, oh, this very structured way where I had to write, to going back again. So I kind of trying to want to leave it open, especially for my students as well, is that there's many ways to write, to create a narrative, to write poetry. So yeah.
I'd say that in a slightly different angle on this question, I really love writing about what I see in the Osage world or in our culture, in the geography, the people, the customs, whatever, just our lives, for Native people, for other Osages to look at. It just feels really special when I read stories that reflect details that I recognize in my life. So I just value that a lot. So I think that's part of what I do. And then I'm not interested in explaining that necessarily, but just having it be part of this fabric, this complexity that I'm describing. So.
Thank you. Unless there's any other questions, we're a little over time. So Lauren, shall we?
Yeah, we can wrap this up. That was such a beautiful reading from all of you. Thank you so much. I'm just gonna kind of give my spiel at the end here. So thank you for giving me a small space here. Thank you all for joining us, both readers and audience. Thank you, Submittable, for your partnership in this event and bringing the Montana Book Festival into the fold of the Eliza So Fellowship. I want to shout out one more time the Whitefish Review. Thank you for your sponsorship of this year's Montana Book Festival's virtual events. As a reminder to those of you watching, you can purchase books by Montana Book Festival authors at Fact and Fiction's website at factandfictionbooks.com. And you can purchase Montana Book Festival merchandise at montanabookfestival.com. And there I urge you to donate so that virtual events like this one can continue into the fall with our MBF Plus events. That is my spiel. Again, what a beautiful reading. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night.